61 patients at Boston City Hospital consumed the regurgitated stomach contents of their doctor through a tube, and not a single one of them knew what was actually being poured into their bodies. This is the Castle experiment, 1927, Harvard Medical School. Welcome back to the lab, my curious test subjects. I am your resident mad scientist, and today we are diving into one of the most brilliant and ethically questionable medical experiments in history. A Harvard doctor named William Bosworth Castle had a theory about why some patients were dying from a blood disorder called pernicious anemia. He suspected the answer was hiding somewhere in the stomach, so he did what any rational scientist would do. He ate a hamburg steak. Then he extracted his own stomach contents. Then he poured them into the stomachs of dying patients through a flexible tube. The patients had no idea what they were consuming. They thought they were receiving cutting-edge medical treatment. They were not wrong, technically. And here is the part that makes this story truly unforgettable. The experiment worked. The patients got better. And Castle did it 60 more times. Let me explain. So what was actually happening inside these patients' stomachs? To understand why Castle did what he did, we need to talk about pernicious anemia. In the 1920s, this disease was a death sentence. Your body could not absorb vitamin B12. Without it, your bone marrow stopped producing red blood cells. You became weak, exhausted, your heart raced, your nerves burned and tingled. Left untreated, you died. There was no cure, until there was, sort of. American physicians George Whipple, William Murphy, and George Minot discovered that patients with pernicious anemia could survive if they ate raw liver. Not a little liver, not a vitamin supplement. 10 ounces of raw or lightly cooked liver. Every single day, an unpleasantly large amount that was difficult to consume. Imagine choking down a plate of slimy organ meat every morning just to stay alive. It worked, but barely. Patients hated it. Doctors knew there had to be a better way. Enter William Bosworth Castle, a young physician at the Thorndike Memorial Laboratory at Boston City Hospital. Castle noticed something strange. Patients with pernicious anemia had shrunken stomachs. They produced almost no stomach acid. Their stomach juice was weak and thin. Castle wondered if the stomach was the key. He ran preliminary tests on patients who thought they were receiving standard diagnostic procedures. In patient consent terms, that means they had absolutely no idea what they were drinking. Replacing stomach juice alone did nothing. The liver had to be present. But why? What was happening when liver met stomach juice? Castle developed a theory. There were two factors at play, one in the stomach, which he called intrinsic factor, one in food, which he called extrinsic factor. The liver was loaded with extrinsic factor. But what if you could combine both in a normal meal? Now you might be wondering how exactly Castle tested this theory. Like a test kitchen, except the recipe was gastric juice and ground beef. And the diners had no idea what was on the menu. Here is what Castle did. He sat down and ate a hamburg steak, a normal meal. Then, using a stomach tube, he extracted his own stomach contents, the partially digested meat, the gastric juice, everything. He collected it in a container, then he walked over to a patient with pernicious anemia, a patient who was dying. A patient who had been told they were receiving an experimental treatment. Completely ethical, obviously. And Castle poured the contents of his own stomach into the patient's stomach through a flexible tube. The patient swallowed it down, believing it was medicine. In patient consent terms, that means they had absolutely no idea what they were drinking. Castle watched. Hay waited. Days passed. Then something remarkable happened. The patient's bone marrow began producing red blood cells. Their energy returned. The tingling in their limbs faded. Their heart rate stabilized. Subject 1. Bone marrow response positive. The experiment worked. Castle's theory was right. The intrinsic factor in his healthy stomach juice had combined with the extrinsic factor in the hamburg steak. Together, they allowed the patient's body to absorb what it needed to survive. The timing was critical. Castle had already proven that replacing stomach juice alone did nothing. The food and the juice had to meet inside the stomach at the same time. Something had to happen between them. And it did. Castle had just demonstrated a clear biological connection between the stomach and the bone marrow. He had unlocked a piece of the pernicious anemia puzzle. and he was just getting started. So what did Castle do with this discovery? He scaled up. Patient 1 became patient 61. Same tube, same hamburg steak, same silence. Castle repeated the experiment over and over. He ate, he extracted, he fed. 61 patients in total received the regurgitated stomach contents of their doctor. Not a single one was told what they were consuming. In patient consent terms, that means they had absolutely no idea what they were drinking. One can imagine the hesitation an ill patient would have if they knew the truth. But the results were undeniable. The patients improved. Their bone marrow responded. Their red blood cell counts climbed. Castle had proven his intrinsic factor and extrinsic factor theory beyond any doubt. His work paved the way for the eventual discovery of vitamin B12 and the development of treatments that did not require patients to eat 10 ounces of liver every day or consume their doctor's vomit. Castle's experiment established the stomach as a critical player in blood cell production. It was groundbreaking science. It saved lives. It also violated every principle of informed consent we hold sacred today. Imagine being told you are getting experimental medicine and finding out decades later it was your doctor's lunch, partially digested. Castle never asked permission. He never disclosed what he was doing. He saw dying patients and a hypothesis worth testing, and he moved forward without hesitation. Medical brilliance and profound ethical violations can coexist in a single experiment. Castle proved that. His legacy is complicated. He is remembered as a pioneer in hematology. He is also remembered as a man who fed 61 people his own vomit without telling them. Both things are true. Both things matter. History does not let you pick one. And all it took was one doctor's willingness to eat, regurgitate and serve his own stomach contents to 61 unsuspecting patients. Medical progress has always required sacrifice, usually someone else's. Castle's work changed medicine. It led directly to the discovery of vitamin B12, the understanding of how the stomach and bone marrow communicate, and treatments that saved countless lives. But it also stands as a stark reminder that scientific genius does not excuse ethical negligence. The patients who received Castle's stomach juice through a tube never consented to what was done to them. They trusted their doctor. They believed they were receiving standard experimental treatment. They were not told the truth. We celebrate the breakthrough. We also remember the cost. That is the lesson, my curious test subjects. Innovation and exploitation are not opposites. Sometimes they are the same experiment viewed from different angles. If this story made you question your next doctor's visit, hit that subscribe button and join me in the lab for more experiments that rewrote the rules. Leave a comment, my curious test subjects. I read every one.